A little confused on the last video and gave the whole story so far at the end of that. And the story so far is at the beginning of that before that video. So yeah, that's kind of weird. I'm going to give a very abbreviated version, which is that the French positioning, this is the third day of the battle. On the first day, the French started to win over here. Coalition Army of Bohemia moved over to here. The French positioned themselves and destroyed the remaining forces there. Well, drove them from the field. This is a big campaign. They'll have a chance to recover. I did a little bit of screwing around with rules and stuff to make things make sense, because I don't have a map to fight those not completely eliminated units that should have some recovery capability, and also to shift away from the strength that the French had placed here. So we're seeing the results of basically more than half a day of recovery and positioning time for the French, where they've created this big perimeter around the Leipzig region. And the Army of Bohemia is mainly streaming on over here. A little bit more coming here that's going to shift over there. A little bit more over here that's going to proceed to attack Lindenau and Plagwitz. There's not an easy way out of there to get back with the rest of the army. And oh shit, I still haven't moved those fuckers on the board. Yeah, those guys have to come on. And the army of Silesia is beginning to come on. It's going to come in and support this attack on the Old Guard with the intention of driving up and over. The rest of the army of Silesia will go down that Halle road, I think. Because I'm a little worried. I don't really have a whole hell of a lot of force here. I have a light corps that's really weak and under Liechtenstein, and he's always in charge of the lights. And Gyulai has a corps that doesn't look terribly powerful, but that's a big corps. That's the Prussian First Corps, and it's quite powerful. That's going to leave me with a possible problem. If I can't take Leipzig, these guys have a hard time making their way to join the rest of the Army of Bohemia. I don't know how to cope with that. Essentially, I think they'll be rolling on initiatives, but maybe they'll be rolling, maybe they'll have the option to roll on orders from Blücher in charge of the Army of Silesia, but as if they're rolling for initiative, which the number is the same, but there aren't any real penalties to ignoring orders from your commander. So while there are penalties for failing to do initiative, I'll bring those guys on. And then actually, sadly, for the continuation of the speed of this video, I picked up a computer game that I actually paid more than a couple bucks for. Not that much more, but nowhere near full price or anything. It was like 80% off. But still, I kind of feel obligated to start playing it, which doesn't mean I'll stop playing this entirely, but it does mean we might see it dragging a little bit more. We've been making some damn good time, mainly because nothing's been happening for a while. So unfortunately, I'm supposed to go for a walk today, and I may still do it on my own, but the person I was supposed to do it with wasn't feeling well yesterday. And we decided against, I guess, I don't know. In the sense that I didn't get an actual response, but I knew that, like, you know, I'm not always like, wow, I didn't get a response, what the hell, I'm gonna throw a fit about it, like I was with the gaming night. That was extreme and weird. This was like, yeah, I understood that if we didn't do something proactively here, it would mean probably no, even though I would rather not have the vagary. In fact, had it been me, and I didn't feel well, and I didn't feel well, and we're not talking really sick or whatever, we're talking period cramps, basically. But, you know, if I hadn't contacted, I probably would have convinced myself to go anyhow. I don't know, or at least to leave it open and whatever. But anyhow. Unfortunately, yesterday I played that damn video game, and it was, you know, maybe not a waste completely of money, but I have better games of its type. The cool thing with it is it's kind of like a little town builder type thing where you're facing enemies and everything, but it's set in a post-apocalyptic world, which I thought would be kind of neat. I knew it wasn't well rated, but it was kind of like much less money. And I'm like, how bad could it be? Well, pretty bad. I would rather play things that I paid like $2 or $3 for instead of this. Anyhow, got some response of, hey, you know, Napoleon can't afford to be on the defensive here. And I kind of understand that. But the thing is, I don't know where the Allies are coming from until they start coming on the board. Remember, I can look at this book. To some extent, I've got some information about where the troops are, but I don't know precisely where they are, probably. That kind of information is beyond what's known here. So I felt like I had to set up a defensive perimeter. I definitely would have continued chasing the army of Bohemia south, would have defeated it in detail with everything I had, and then turned back up to face these other armies. I don't have that option because of the map. The edge of the map is what prevented me from doing what I want to do. Beyond that, the fact that the coalition forces can shift their axis by my made-up rules, whatever, and, you know, how much would I really know? If I know the coalition's down here, right, you know, in this general area where my finger is, I don't know if they're going to head this way or this way. And I got to defend both those positions and be prepared to react to it. So don't get the impression that I'm only taking a defensive position. But both sides know they have to destroy the enemy army. The coalition has a huge numerical advantage. I expect them to attack, and I expect to be able to react with an active defense to that. But I got to see where they show up, because my scouting is not going to be good enough to tell me precisely which roads they're coming down or whatever. At least that's my guesstimate of it. And now I'm beginning to see enough at this point to know where the majority of the coalition forces are coming in. And we got a whole bunch heading this way. These guys have turned this way. I'm assuming Napoleon is going to get word of that by the time he can actually give orders. We got threat here. Those guys turning is just weird. Like, that's the kind of thing that I would look at and say, boy, that's fucking stupid. And it probably is, but that's what is happening. I see the weak spot as here. Army of Bohemia forces again. They're divided. Some of them are here. Yeah, they're going to take a while to get there. Some of them are way over here. So I think that's probably where I'm going to be putting the focus of matters. And Napoleon has called Oudinot up. Doesn't look like there's going to be a big threat on Victor from what I can see on the board. And Mortier, but he couldn't get in range because I don't think MacDonald's going to get there in time. So I feel like I have to start moving these forces to deal with what's out there. Again, the defensive position was because I had a big unknown, right? I don't know where the coalition's going to strike me from. And I know they're coming from the north too, but not that way at least. I But this gives me the most flexible capability to respond to them. Anyway, I'm probably going to go for a walk today. Probably going to play some of that stupid video game again, too. At which point, you just sign me off. I'm out. I learned another buddy of mine is leaving my workplace. Everybody is fucking jumping ship there from our team. And I don't know. We're losing everybody with any experience in what we're doing. As we try to make up a new reason for our existence. I'll do the coalition turn because it's mainly just mechanical stuff at this point, and maybe all you see of me today. A decent walk and replenishing my supply of vodka, seeing a couple of guys I know from the bar, one of which having a hard time, got hit by a car recently. It's a pretty exciting day for me. Plus I went to the bank and found out something that I should have been able to try without. Ooh, turkeys. Doing something. Puffing himself. I found enough time and enough light to push out a French half of the turn, and the reaction is beginning. All right, so what's going on? Things that are set up here, those don't appear like they're gonna be needed right now. And I gotta think about them a little bit. Victor rolled for initiative, got it. He's gonna start pursuing this. It's a smaller force than he was worried about. He has no announcement like they do down here of a much larger force in place. I see something coming, but I think that's over there. And I have no signs that there's a problem in this sector at all. Napoleon gave orders to Oudinot to march in and help support this because there's a nasty gap there that I want to defend. Rearranging some of my artillery here because it looks like the attack's going to be further east. So shifting some of the guns. Got one shot off over on Poniatowski's forces. Pujol has moved into place to defend Poniatowski's flank. Napoleon has gathered, let's see who. He got MacDonald and I think there's a Mortier together for a quick chit chat. Meanwhile, Marat is speaking with whoever's up there, Marmont, who I don't think deserves to have that much fatigue on him. I think that's only a 2. What I'm going to do is Marmont, with support of Nansouty, is going to try to hit those Austrians. Again, let's beat up the army of Bohemia where it can't really react because it's spread all over hell and creation, and Schwarzenberg is centered here. Set up a strong defense here, maybe some offense. I don't know yet. I think MacDonald is going to still slide in there, but I'm not sure, you know. I haven't decided fully what my orders are going to be. It's kind of weird because I got 2 different commanders, Marat and Napoleon. Normally you don't have that kind of thing, so you have one person writing all the orders. So something feels a little funky with 2 army level commanders in the same general location. I think the game should, for the campaign game, should, but I'm not going to change this now because, I mean, I could have probably gotten Marmont down here to talk to Napoleon, so no biggie. But I think the campaign game should probably deal with, you know what, if you're within a certain range of Napoleon, you can't give orders, you know, without rolling for initiative or something. Because it just, you know, feels weird to have Napoleon plus a little bit of his intellect over there as he directs the command on this side. But, you know, Victor's coming up with his own ideas, which also fit in nicely with this, where he's going to pursue these guys wherever the hell they're going, basically. Anything else? MacDonald rested a little bit. He was getting tired, but the artillery is moving up and catching up with the rest of the forces. And that puts us to the Austrian side of things. And yeah, we got a little, or to the coalition side, we got a little too close where some sniping fire is available. I really shouldn't have allowed that to happen, but it didn't cause any damage, but still. That's the end of the 7 a.m. turn. I had to reset this at 1 because I seem to have lost my number that I had there. I probably scooped it up when I split into 2 trays for that. I moved the reinforcements. There's only 1 French reinforcement and the deaths all onto the same tray since there's room now. So there's enough light that the coalition can see what it's doing. So Schwarzenberg gave orders to Constantine to launch an attack aiming at this gap here, which kind of suits what he was planning anyway. And he's moving over to give orders to Hesse-Homburg to attack across and really try to hook up over there at the edge of the Universal's holes. Meanwhile, these guys still continuing their shift, deploying here. There was a little bit of plinking, and one of it hit, which is why I had to assign a number to the turn and looked, and hey, I haven't been keeping up with that. Kept up with it through all those turns where, like, only the French were on the board, and there was really kind of no reason for it. But and Blucher's forces beginning to come over as well to help in this assault. I think the old guard's got problems, and we shall see. I gotta say, I've gotten so used to not firing that earlier, the turn before, I had to catch my fires before, I walked away, went to get the camera, and I'm like, oops. Or maybe it was while I was on camera. And let's see what else. I think that's probably it for tonight. We never know. But Napoleon's got to devise his orders. Oh yeah, and I think I've mentioned this before. This gap wouldn't have been apparent at night. There might be troops in there with campfires and whatnot to deceive. There might not. But no matter what, it wouldn't be absolutely obvious that, you've got a big gap there. So it wasn't until when the daylight occurred that the coalition could make any kind of plans like that. More than that, they were off the map. So they're making their plans as, well, we're not absolutely sure where the French are, etc. And this is the kind of stuff, when I played the Austerlitz scenario, when I played it opposed, and I think when I've played it not opposed for that matter as well, I tend to devise this huge set of orders. Now, granted, it was all triggered and contingent on and all kind of complexity written into those orders to make sure that I would get the attack I wanted out of the Austrians, or out of the coalition. They're Austrians and Russians. And, I was using information that may or may not have been at all available. On the bright side, I kind of was, because I had to do it so early in the evening, I kind of was using information on where the French were positioned at the beginning of the night. So just because they didn't move or anything, I had a pretty good idea of what was going on. Here, this battlefield's so vast, and there's so many disconnections and whatever, that it's really not trivial to figure out, hey, where is the enemy actually? Like, if I was sitting across from him here, I would say, yeah, I might have an idea of where he's positioned and be able to make those judgments earlier. This system, without its delays, without its, pretty much without delays, because you can walk around and talk to people and then they automatically accept and will act on the next turn. I feel like you could really, really come up with a good coordinated attack just, in the middle of the night when you didn't have that intelligence anymore. And you could be using information like, oh, McDonald's marching across here. Well, I got no way of knowing that. This is the common situation in most board war games, which is the, hey, I have a God's eye view. And that's not terrible in modern era, where maybe the communications are coming through rapidly enough and whatever. But as soon as you start getting into, pre-20th century, you're looking at a situation where really the local commander has the only real view of what the hell's going on. And that local commander might be the overall army commander in one locality. But most games aren't vast enough in terms of the scope of the tactical situation to be able to cause that kind of problem to really, really shine, where you're like, geez, I have no idea where we're talking about. Gettysburg as an example. Gettysburg in Terrible Swift Sword is a little bit bigger than Leipzig in terms of area. So clearly in terms of hexes, in terms of actual area too, but clearly this game's scale is such that it allows you, distances that are beyond normal sighting ranges and whatnot. There's really no chance to really observe the whole battlefield in the same way. And that begins to break apart the idea of communications and making decisions, that support one another very easily. Sure, if you hear the sound of gunfire in a certain direction, you know something's going on, but you don't know exactly what. And where you also see this, there's some nice command-like rules in that, in terms of initiatives and such not, is in the Zucker operational games, where, again, you're not going into that whole battlefield with a grand plan necessarily. Like, you don't have something written. You have a lot of reactive capability. So something that happens on one side of the map that's clearly too far for anyone else to observe or even have any information about at that time can be reacted to in that distance. And that is just a problematic fact of that, God's view, right? There are ways to solve it. No talking about the game unless you're next to each other, essentially in the same space. And you can send written messages, but they take a while to get there. And stuff like that with multiple players doing things. Because that way, and this is how most minis games of any kind of scale are done. The multiple players each have their own perception, and they may be vaguely aware of the rest of the battlefield. They still have that God's eye view, but they have their own concept of how to deal with it, which probably leads to as many problems. Part of that means that when I make fuck-ups like, those artillery may not have moved as much as they should have at some point, I just write them off. They're part of the problem. they're part of the. You have no idea what happened. Maybe some wagons lost. A wagon lost its wheel, caused a jam. There were problems getting it fixed, and maybe there were some refugees. Who the hell knows? Anyway, just babbling about stuff that has very little to do with the game. Playing the game out, but has a lot to do, especially the particular circumstances of the playthrough, but has a lot to do with why something of this scale kind of needs more than the rules that are presented, and needs more than the rules that are presented in the Napoleonic Brigade series or anything else. If you're doing something this size, you almost need some other layer of rules set to prevent you from using that God's view too much to your advantage. There's another side of it. Another thing that when I was on my walk I was thinking about was that, I wouldn't want to do something this size necessarily with NBS. But I don't know, maybe I said this already, but a game of, although I did the 7 days thing and that worked fine, honestly, but a game of this scale, well, scope, not scale, having this scale and having some of the abstractions, et cetera, is actually helpful, because there's shit that's gonna be a little rough around the edges and everything, but it always will be in this system. But this is where I think this system actually shines, is in taking on something this size. And the shame of it all is really that most of the games in this series are just giving you kind of a view that you could be doing at a regimental level or at a brigade level, where hexes are actually something the brigade would fill, like the way the NBS series works. This one, it's just, it really fits it nicely, and I feel like this is where this system has sort of a, it's right to take a little bit of a step back and play something with this kind of capability for maneuvers and whatnot, that you don't usually see in a tactical game. Gettysburg, the four battles for Gettysburg, kind of, except they didn't give you enough maps to give you the whole thing. So you've got these weird transit, I can move between one map and the other for so many turns and whatever. I'm really most enamored with this system when it plays out, where it gives me this kind of scope to fiddle around with. The only negative I had is, hey, I should be able to get off the map, just like in every tactical game that there is. Drawing myself away from my lousy computer game long enough to do the French side of the turn at least. I'm really, it was easy to do the stuff when nothing was moving, but now it's like, oh boy, I gotta face real action again. So what do we got? Sebastiani has made his way down. Victor's charging forward, but there's some cav, and some cav is a problem, because he has none. And depending on what happens, countercharges could stop his whole advance, which is where, well, within range. Remember, these guys have a range of 2. They're lights. Oudinot beginning his move. Napoleon and Murat had their discussions and whatnot, and have given orders maybe a little different than I thought, because these guys are going to take that gap. That's going to move forward. McDonald's been given orders not to go where he was supposed to before, but to take Mortier's position up here. The place I'm most worried about is here. This is the old guard standing alone with the Sebastiani cav, and I don't know if they can. I mean, they're the old guard. They're gonna just get butchered, or they're going to win. They're not gonna run. If they do get butchered, that could be problematic across the line for Napoleon's army. Even though there are no rules for it, you gotta see, the guard failed to hold a position or something like that. That has to be a serious blow. But them failing is pretty fucking hard to happen because they don't have any core collapse rolls or anything. I don't feel like I've committed them. You know, it's a situation where they're sitting somewhere. Yes, I kind of knew the enemy was there, but it just, I don't know. Anyway, that may be the reason why this particular set does not have guard commitment rolls. That and the fact that the old and young guard are a pretty fair proportion of Napoleon's forces. So he can't keep the whole guard out. He's got to use some of them. Yeah, anyway, we'll see. Maybe I make something up. Maybe I don't. Oh, and this goes over here instead of these to remind me, because I need a break in between, and unfortunately my break might end up being, well, it's not going to be more of the computer game, but it might end up being something like sitting outside and drinking for a while or something, and that might be it for today. I don't know. No real fighting's coming, and it inhibits my desire to play because, I don't know, whatever. It's just not, I'm enjoying, I'm just dreading. Yeah, it's just part of life. Coalition is still positioning themselves. These guys running away, a rear guard in there. Taking some hits though, but no real heavy fighting is happening yet. And the nature of the fatigue rolls, etc., mean that I probably want to rest a little bit before I charge because I just deployed. Back on the personal note of things, funny thing, when I blank out completely when I go dancing, and then after that, I have, and this was even before life turned horrible over a year ago. I have sort of this, inability to do anything, a kind of depression. I often feel very, very sad now during that. Normally, I would just feel kind of useless. Sometimes it's just the uselessness. But the video game did the same kind of thing. It puts me into a mindlessness, and coming out of that mindlessness is like the full weight hits a lot harder than it does if I don't throw myself completely into an escapism. So, I mean, playing these games, watching news, work, reading, all of the, reading's troublesome in different ways. But, I had the walk yesterday, which kind of centered my feelings on pain and then blanking out. And it's just, but that's not enough to make me overcome my natural inclination to just blow everything off for the sense of oblivion, even if it's only temporary. So here we're looking at the situation after the French move, and it's beginning to get tough. There still isn't a lot of fighting in everywhere. We still have more to dread, but just moving so many different components in the map is getting to be an issue. We see, who is this? Marmont and Mortier converging together. Mortier is just going forward, but at the point where the Austrian force is trying to slip through. Cavalry under Nansouty moving forward to protect that. We got MacDonald moving forward to his position. Over here, Napoleon's going to go talk to Lauriston. I think there's some opportunity for me to swing across here. Oops, forgot a shot. Okay, that's a hit on 34. check. Chasing this artillery off, or this cavalry off, which I think I just may have done, is a major, major factor. Yes, we got both of them because of -2 on the secondary one. We're looking at turn 3. There's a lot of long-range vision going on. Yeah, that's actually a big deal. Those cav were what prevented me from slamming right up into that infantry and starting a fight. So instead I moved forward a little more slowly, unlimbered some guns, and you can see they worked. I have no cav to deal with the Austrian cav, but the Austrians didn't have a whole hell of a lot. Got Pujol here positioning himself midway between the two forces to try to delay things long enough for the infantry to get in the way. It looks like the Austrians aren't going to make it again unless this force can free them. Over here, there's not a whole hell of a lot I can do. I rested my cav because they're going to need to do some charges. That area is still fixed. Murat going into that side of the map to take command of it as Napoleon takes command of the main battle that's forming up here in the same zone as the last fighting. And now things get a little bit worse because, yeah, the coalition is going to engage at this point. We have fighting going to start there. It's going to start along here pretty soon. Not sure we're going to be close enough for close combat this turn. Here, and then when the French come again, there's going to be pursuit fighting down here. But yeah, I feel like by positioning that defensive reactive position, I've managed to get a lot of force in play to take on, once again, what I thought was a fairly powerful coalition concentration with the Army of Bohemia here. And here also we're going to see a fair concentration, I think. I don't know how well the old guard can hold out. So, yeah, it's promising to turn up into an interesting fight, I think. Reporting at the end of the coalition turn, but midway through, after I've moved almost all of the units, there is so much room for jockeying on this big map. And it's one of the reasons that I like tactical games to be, not one mappers or anything like that. They're just, it takes forever to come into contact in these type of things. And there's a certain majesty to that, especially once you're kind of used to the battle, just watching the troops slowly come together. But here, you've got this attempt to swing around here. But I sent my cav ahead a little bit. But Pujol is somewhat stymieing it here. The forces that are coming into play, the Austrians are stuck with no cav, so squares to get through Pujol if I can't blow him away with significantly less Prussian cav. Sending some of the Russian guards up there as well. That's Prussian guard there. These guys, looks like they're able to run away, starting to push through with the Imperial Guard into that gap where Oudinot's supposed to make it there, but he's got a long walk still, and I think the French line is going to suffer some problems. Blücher moving his forces into play, but I'm too close here. I'm taking fire, I've got to attack, but man, I don't want to. Yeah, I outnumber the Imperial Old Guard, but, man, first of all, there's some cav there. I got to figure out how to deal with that. And yes, I may do a cav charge here. I'm going to have to do this like I've done some of the other games, sector by sector, where I'm I'm able to focus enough to figure out if I want to use my cav somewhere. It's no big deal. It has no effect on anything else. But yeah, I'm looking at, the firepower values. Look at these. The infantry have firepower values of 4. They're just going to tear me apart. And it's not like they're also strong in melee. This is the guard, man. This is the old guard. It's just going to repulse me. And what I'd like to have had is to have Blucher's forces hit at the same time. Unfortunately, they weren't really coordinating, so I'm okay with what's happening here. It's just, oh man, this is not what I wanted to face. That effect of the Cav duel was kind of mixed. We haven't cleared Sebastiani out of there, but we got the edge on him. Not enough that I could advance, however, in part because I screwed up and rolled the Cav charge well ahead of time. One that was not a counter charge. I got used to the counter charges and then finally hit the unit that I needed to clear out. But I've got 2 units I have to clear out. I wouldn't have gotten them both. So I'm resting Gulai. Yeah, I hear Sebastiani and Gulai, and I want to say Giuliani. I don't know. Liechtenstein, though, I had already committed, and he charged forward with what little he's got. He's going to get slaughtered. But Gulai at least has, who's that? York with Blucher coming in, but that's a long hike. I might be busted by the time that happens. Anyway, we're going into more detail again because just so much is happening and it's hard to keep it all in my head to report with the video. And yeah, Liechtenstein, what little he had there just got blown back. I get rid of these. I can't tell where, because they're different games. They have different printing. Some successful fire over here, just plinking really. Along the lines there, and then rally going on here. Up there, that hasn't started yet really, and but it's going to. And it's gonna start everywhere. And, oh boy, it's already feeling like a lot, but some of that is just knowing that it's gonna be a lot more very shortly. Anyway, that is the end of the 8 a.m. turn. I feel like there was something else I wanted to say. I don't know how much more I can do. I mean, it's early in the day. There's tons of light, but I'm just so fucking... It's just a big job. If this were not Napoleonic, it would be a whole hell of a lot easier. And I've brought this up a lot of times with any of the Napoleonic systems. CWB, whatever, I just run down the line and everything. But that added burden of the Cav charges and how to interact with them, decisions that have to be made early before anything else goes, and pretty much you kind of don't know you need them until it's too late. You start moving some units and you're like, oh, fuck. Which is why the sector by sector section makes sense because, I started moving some. I can pull those back and I can do my Cav charges, which is essentially what happened here, although I didn't actually pull Liechtenstein back. I was just like, fuck it. It's not causing any harm. I wish I could enjoy these viscerally the way some of you watching it are doing. I guess everybody is sort of if they're enjoying it, but in terms of now I don't need to play it or something along those lines, but no, I bought it for a reason. But there's oddly enough, I'm the second person to do a long video series on this, and I watched some of it, and it's good stuff. It's just I'm gonna play this anyway, and I might as well video it, give different impressions, whatever, different view of the same battle. But usually with these with this series at least, there's not a lot of other people doing stuff, and some of the other things that I do as well. There's just not many people touching them. Although more and more people are doing video playthroughs of things, which I don't know, more variety. But it was kind of nice being the only person in town because I know that mine are less polished. And my mind goes wandering off in weird places. But, I'm not really in it for the views. I don't know what. I'm in it for the chance to talk to people who will listen. And, if that's like, I don't know, I get a couple hundred views on something like this on each playthrough. But nobody's listening to the whole thing, or most people aren't. But there's a small segment that are, and that's like, wow, that's a lot more human interaction than I would get otherwise. And this is really, the only human interaction in an enjoyable way. I mean, I get meetings at work or whatever. That's not really that much fun. And I could probably go out for a walk once or twice a week with someone. But again, this is more under my control, and it's just better. And it's about this game, It's about this wonderful thing that's evolving. I don't know. I've gotten into kind of trying to look into, well, why do I do this? I started this at a certain point in my life. That point seems to have been largely bookended and is gone now. Does it make sense to keep going? Does it not? I don't know. I gleaned certain things from it, certain advantages, some gaming that I did in Phoenix that I wouldn't have run into the guys if it hadn't been for this, and then here as well. But those tools have been used, and whatever came of it, and nothing more will, probably. Oh boy. Yeah, I get the reason why some people are like, it's just too big for me. Back, sides, everything hurts reaching around here. So I did the French side of the 830 turn, and a little bit of calf tuss up here and here. I think I talked about those. Also here, where you see, hey, I scared some Russian guard. Everything I can to slow things down as Udno tries to make his way up here. Napoleon's chatting with Auguro. Maybe get him to cover a little bit, I don't know. He can do that on his own, But it's the only person who doesn't have orders right now in this general area. So it seemed important. We got forces coming in. I found more of Latour Marlborough. I don't know. It's not Marlborough. Latour Marlborough. His force is in Pajol's force. Half of me wants to say, I bet you they set up that way. Like, it's hard for me to believe. Yeah. Those units set up with him. They look like his. They're not under anyone's command. So I don't know what to do with them. I sent a couple of them up to the rest of the corps, but he's still got ones in there, and they got involved in the fighting. And I'm like, oh, those numbers don't look right. Oops. But honestly, units did attach and detach to some extent. Now, the problem is if you allow people to do that kind of at will, without any limitations, they end up abusing those kind of roles. Especially with the fatigue roles where you're like, oh, I'm part of this corps now. But if something moves along accidentally with someone else, I got no problem with that. That's an attachment that happened below the level of my command. Anyway, yeah. So the fight is really beginning to show up here, but the actual fighting hasn't really started. Except up here, the old guard is really letting the Austrians know, yeah, you just don't belong here, man. Go away. And Blucher is kind of worried as he hears the screams of the Austrians running back. Now, it's just not pretty. Remember, Austrian units are not high morale in this scenario. Now, we got some 8s, but most of these are 7s. And they're facing 11s. They're not going to break that shit. And it's defensive, so it gets defensive fire first, generally. Yes, this was an offensive turn, but that just meant that there was nobody next to me, and I could use my artillery on them. Yeah, it looks hopeless to me. I think those guards are going to just hold that town with no problem against 3 corps. Playing straight up with the more modern rules as used in Hanau, because the numbers aren't given in this. I made up my numbers and whatnot, but I also made up other things. Liechtenstein would have been completely desperation round. Now, that would have absolutely no effect, except for the -3 to his morale rolls until he recovers, which, you know, as soon as those units get out of disorder, they recover and we're all the way back up to normal morale. However, I would have blown both of my, hey, I've got to worry my whole force might rout checks because they don't affect the disordered units. I kind of screwed that up in one of the games. Yeah, in Jena and Auerstadt. But yeah, essentially by getting all your forces disordered, well, that's what the impact is at worst for it, is that everybody gets disordered who isn't already. But by getting everybody disordered, you blow that away, and now the units have a little bit more resilience than they would otherwise. I'm not worrying about things like that. But also, in particular here, I am not counting near disorders against the core morale. And the main reason for that is it's too hard to do. I also think that it doesn't particularly add much to the game, one way or another. Those demoralization levels are only really important when you're sitting in them for real. But yeah, I could see where forces would get that -2 morale just because so much of the unit's beaten up. The question is demoralization that level, or is it the rout level? Of course, the rout level is death under the standard rules if you're not playing with any options. So demoralization may make more sense, but it's just too damn hard to calculate because units generally aren't routing. If units are routing, it's usually a sign that that whole force is in a lot of trouble, which emotionally fits with what I'm seeing, with the idea that, like, yes, the unit could start dissolving on its own, basically. The impacts are less, though, than maybe, you'd expect. Until you get the desperation morale, the impacts are relatively minor. And even there, they don't send units routing, except for units that retreat next to other units, which I probably always forget. Anyway, I just thought I'd come back and yammer about that for whatever reason. I thought it was important enough to point out that, hey, this whole unit would have been completely out of morale at this point, and that has no real effect, although if only a couple of units recover their morale, I would still have penalties on all the others, and it might make it almost impossible for the unit to recover its morale. So there are some weird things that go along with there. But to me, disordered is is sort of like open formation from the minis world. And usually they have about the same effects, to tell you the truth. Except that open formation, the big bonus of that is you're not disordered. You're able to operate normally, but also you're able to be in defensive terrain, which this game kind of covers as well. But if it's more than that, if it's really a morale state type thing, which then it's like, yeah, well, maybe it does make sense that the whole unit is cowering a little bit. Not busted up completely, just cowering. I'm not going to get to play much today. Maybe the half turn from Austria. Work has been crazy and dancing. So, the Cav charge phase is a particularly strange period, and it's one that I feel needs to be highlighted because a lot of, the big thinking, moving big formations around, and then all the firing and everything, yeah, that all makes sense to me. The Cav stuff gets lost because, again, it's done so early in the phase, but also it's this complicated little procedure I'm not really used to in non-Napoleonic stuff. So what did we have? Well, the Prussians charged against Pujol's forces, and they actually did a pretty good job, and they're clearing the way for an advance. We've got one charge against some guns that are limbered, that are going to get schwacked pretty hard. That seemed more valuable than chasing down Cav. One of the problems with chasing down Cav is even if you're on a good table, you might just get a demoralized or something against the enemy, and you might take a casualty. And I'm not really sure which is better, which is worse. I mean, casualties can be recovered. They might be stragglers if your unit doesn't get wrecked, but destroyed, essentially. But on the other hand, just disordering some artillery might not be a big deal at all. It just runs back and can recover more quickly, probably, than you're going to recover your casualties. And your casualties might end up, well, it's a hard call. Anyway, swoop down. We got another charge against some guns here that are unlimbered, but I'm coming from a flank. Now I'm going to take fire from the square that I scared up there, but yeah. And then I walk over here and I'm like, oh shit, I got no idea what to do. I've got some Austrian Cav facing potentially Sebastiani's Cav. Now, I've got a numbers advantage here of light Cav and should be able to win this fight, but maybe not. And then here, I'm just outclassed by far and have no idea what I'm going to do. I guess I'll make that charge and we'll see what happens with it. Successful. The counter charge was on like the 1 to 2 table, but Sebastiani adds a bonus. He ends up disordered. We take a casualty. That's the second casualty on the 50 unit. No, actually, I think I shifted it to a different unit. I mean, you're allowed to stack how you like, so. The problem was when I flipped them over, the 50 was on top, but if I had any thought, I wouldn't have done that because that thing already had a casualty. And we'd rather spread our casualties around so that we have a chance of recovering them as stragglers. All right, that puts us to the normal movement, and this is going to be a horrendous day. Now forward here, and I didn't do this in real time, but I want to highlight it because it shows some of the complex interactions that you have, even in this relatively lighter system to handle Napoleonics, right? So this unit was in square here on the tape. There was a Cav here. I moved up using full movement allowance. That means I'm fatigued by it, but whatever. With that square, that threatened the Cav. The Cav ran away. That opened things up so that I could advance otherwise, mainly with this unit. This unit would have had to advance in square otherwise, right up against the enemy. And that's not something you really want to do. So it was kind of a hard call as to whether or not Pujol wanted to stand there and take limited fire from squares, 1 point if only this went forward, 2 if this goes forward, but this is at risk of getting shot up. I chose to run away. Maybe not a wise choice, to tell you the truth, but it's what I did. And that means now the entire Austrian line is getting itself engaged in that general area. My thinking was, I got some young guard here, whatever, to stiffen it. I should be able to take it. Plus, I get first fire on all these Austrians that are moving forward. But in order for them to skirt the Universitas Holz with their cannons, they kind of have to blow the French back. Well, this is how the rest of the game is going to be in terms of effort. Half a turn. And I've had a hard day at work where I couldn't steal much time. Which is a rarity, but I don't actually know that I can get too much of this done during breaks and whatever anymore. Which is problematic. So what did we have? Well, let's take a look at the situation because a lot's happened. So who's this? Gulai is still advancing, but his cav support is relatively weak. It's down to these 2 stacks right now. He's not completely hopeless against Sebastiani's cav, but and some of that is Liechtenstein's that he's using. But he's having a hard time getting forward, and his units are not terribly fatigued. Yeah, they better not be. Did I forget to roll a rally there, though? That seems likely. They tried to catch the rallies. I got this one, but I don't think I got that one. So that's 8-6, probably 7. Yeah, no. All right. That's how I expect to see things. That's how I usually do them, is if they rally, they're stacked with the leader still. If they don't, I run them away from the leader. Leader can catch up. Blucher marching forward still. Figures maybe he can save Gulai's ass. Over here, the escape is largely complete. Of course, Victor is going to come charging through the woods after him. Imperial Guard cav, man, just melted that front line. 1 unit. And then I blew back to avoid taking more fire where there's not much I can do. And I got a lot of this stuff. All right, maybe not that much. I'm looking for it. Most of it's over here. But yeah, I think I'm going to be able to get a nice wedge between the lines and cause a real problem there. Likewise, the Prussian cav did a good job over on Pajol. Now, again, this is the Guard Corps. This is the combined Prussian-Russian guards. So you expect this to be able to do some damage, and it's showing that it can. It's not just, oh, look, they're higher morale. They're better units. They do more hurt. And I guess that, well, yeah, we had this. So that didn't go as badly as I feared for the Austrians, but they need somebody to save their bacon still, and with the young guard in the way, yeah, that may not be so good, because that stuff is better than the Prussian Guard coming up their way. No, I'm sorry, this isn't Prussian Guard. This is the Austrian Reserve stuff, which is pretty decent, but it doesn't compare. So yeah, this isn't Prussian. Those got to be pretty good. Hesse Homburg still. Yeah, that's Austrian stuff. I should not have those there. Yeah. Now I've taken them away, and yeah, those are Austrian. Doesn't make a difference. They're just showing that there's a cloud of skirmishers out there. All right, and lots more reinforcements, both sides coming in. For the French, I think, is that another? It's another real corps coming in, which will be a helpful thing. For the Russians, I believe that's going to be coming in from here. And the intention there was for this and this to both hit the Leipzig line. Well, the old guard had something to say about that so far. The slowest, most interactive, most painful part of the system, the cav attacks, are taking a bigger and bigger role. So again, and I'm gonna highlight what they do. I mean, there's no way to get around it in a Napoleonic battle, or for that matter, in earlier periods as well. This is about as light as you can do at any justice, right? But anyway, the French trying to clear the Prussian cav here, or sorry, the Austrian reserve cav. They look gray, they look dark, they're Prussians, man. I'll not step on that one. We bounce off them. They basically were able to countercharge 2 of my units, 3 of my units, 3 of my units, and drive them all back. The hope had been to get rid of this unit so that I could move forward unimpeded, but that's not going to happen. Over here, Kellerman used another charge, one unit, to slow the Russian Imperial Guard advance and grenadiers from pushing forward too much more quickly by forcing them into squares. You know, it's a pain to do that to them. Not a huge one, but it's a pain. And although they were in column anyway, so I don't know how much of a big deal it is. And then over here, the French triggered a countercharge, which they drove away and then smashed into these guys. They could have hit these now disordered and running away infantry instead. They failed their square check, but I thought it was more important to smack into those cav, especially since I'm doing it, it's not absolutely clear here, but from the flank. So that should be kind of nice. Those don't get resolved until the melee phase. Countercharges, though, do, and this Kellerman blew because he just doesn't want to go charging into squares of the Imperial Guard. That seems like a good way to get yourself lost. Careful, the time on my clocks is actually the time outside now. 6:14, I usually leave. Well, I'm going to have to get ready at some point where I may not be able to finish this turn. I'm used to, hey, it's daylight, I have time, you know, to play a full turn or whatever. That's not going to be the case anymore after the good old Ides of March passed. I forgot to kill somebody on it. But yeah, it is somewhat troubling, actually, because I'm just used to, hey, it's always dark as hell by the time I'm, you know, taking my crap or whatever before I go out. Something that'll scare those cavalry, though. I got some big guns here that I opened up in front of them. I might just blow them for that. I don't think I want to take that hit. Should have pulled them up before I brought the infantry up, the infantry that moved there. You know, actually I did. So that infantry could have moved further. Let me push them forward. Forces another cav to blow. And I'm still going to take fire, but not that full artillery blast that would have just been opened up right in my face there. That would have been a nasty shot. This still is probably not good, and 2 of my cav are blown now. Things look a lot weaker for the Prussians. Unlimbering some artillery near the cav. There's not much you can do about that. The cav charge radius is 1 hex away. If you're not marching up on them, they don't get a countercharge on you. Well, their countercharge radius. This is very different from what you will see if I ever get around to the Wellington's victory, Ney versus Wellington stuff, where and for that matter, I think NBS also, but in the Wellington's victory, you set up these charge zones, and if the enemy steps into one of those, they get charged, or you have the opportunity to charge them. But you could avoid them, It becomes it's one of the things I don't like about this system is it becomes really, really heavy on planning by setting up all these counters for, it's like pre-fire and stuff like that, where you're setting up fire lanes and everything. And it may all be, an accurate depiction compared to this, where you can keep doing charge after charge after charge with the counter charges. But it's also more painful to deal with. But I'm pretty sure NBS has greater counter charge range. I feel like I have to check that. But I just know it's true. Now I sound like Bill Maher. Yeah, I don't know where I am. That's optional rules. Okay, so actually one of the optional rules is there. The opportunity to charge light cav, an opportunity to charge 2 hexes away by moving an extra hex. Yeah. Some of it has to do with the size of how much territory each of these hexes covers to keep the size of the cav charge at a reasonable limit. But they do group cavalry battalions together into larger units. Or cav squadrons together into larger units to deal with this kind of stuff. So it may not be accurately depicting things as much as it would seem to just by the ranges, etc. So, some of the decisions to limit the number of pieces, whatever. Because, but then again, the strengths, you don't want much weaker than what the cav actually are to be able, to be charging a line. The line will just laugh at them and say, okay, I'll take it, But yeah, I'm pretty sure the NBS system, and again, the hexes mean less distance, or mean greater, each hex is smaller distance, so the charge radiuses are greater, and there's more capability for it there. And I get the cav is the painful part of the system. Oh, and I did, for whatever reason, Mortier, but didn't do Marmont yet. Generally try to work from one end to the other, but I needed to see what he could do. For me to make it out the door in time, I gotta stop playing. It's gonna take 10-20 minutes to do all the firings here. It's not a huge thing, but there's enough points of contact that in the combat systems mechanically tedious enough that that's not quite the word, complicated enough, I don't know. There's enough steps to it that it's not going to be just, roll a die on a CRT a couple of times. So, who the hell is this? I haven't figured out what to do with Napoleon yet. Oudinot, continuing his fast march over here. I've got Sulham and Ney coming on way back here. With Ney with him, it's an army command. I can throw that in here where I've still got some worries, especially with the numbers coming in. Or, depending on what that column does, maybe I'll concentrate on that side. I don't know. But overall, I think my focus of the offensive is over here. Let's destroy the army of Bohemia over here. And then we can swing and cut up the army of Silesia, but there's not going to be time today. This is too big a force to do so. So then the big thing becomes holding out against the army of Silesia. And the army of North and army of Poland come in later and give me additional challenges. But it does feel like, at least so far, Napoleon's got a handle on this, that, getting the battle in on those first couple of days. They're almost, I almost wish that, and I think there is a scenario, that I had played out something more like the historical, which is just, yeah, there was a little bit of light engagement on those first couple of days. But the thing is, I can't look at a map and not try to take advantage of the situation that's present. And yeah, I mean, if you're able to commit Poniatowski, Kellerman, the other forces that came in to Murat's command, I mean, even with just Murat's forces that were initially there, it would be really hard to take the 3 towns you had to take. I don't remember. I think they were this, I think this, and that. The coalition would have a hard time taking those from them. But I was able to, use what was there along with whatever else came in. The initial situation is pretty close to even. I think a slight advantage for the French, honestly. But yeah, now I feel like I'm in a much, much stronger position to smack around each of these forces. I'll do the firing and the melee. I hope I can remember, and do things right. Sometime probably at about 24 hours after I recover, after resolving combat during the French side of the turn. Oh boy, do I, it's, I'm not hungover or anything, but I'm so worn out that it's really hard to stand or anything. I just want to slump down and do nothing. But on top of that, there's the sort of malaise that comes to, which makes it hard to go on, but I felt like I needed to do this, at least this half, probably more today. I don't know. But the Austrians actually stood pretty firm back there. It doesn't terribly look like it, but they succeeded in some morale checks that weren't terribly likely. But they're getting pushed back. Not a lot going on along here, just plinking distance fire with the artillery. I mean, some of it's effective. The big story is over here, where Sebastiani managed to use these cav to absolutely wipe out Gyulai's cav force. I don't know, he's probably got some left somewhere. This, I think, is Liechtenstein. It's got his coloration, as is this. So I don't know. But there's none functioning left, which is going to make advancing really, really difficult. Of course, we got the Prussian cav coming up next. See how that handles things. Whew. Or another, you have to say, I can't let one fucking cavalry unit hold back my entire column just because it could intercept anything. So I got into a position where I pushed an Imperial Russian Guard unit, actually Finns, across that stream. It triggered a potential for a reaction charge. Well, I took the reaction charge, and because these are Guard, they have a 4 combat value in melee. I ended up, heavily outclassing the light cav that was hitting me. So even not being in square formation, I was able to take that. I got a lucky roll. So this ended up demoralized, damaged, and fleeing. And now we can position the flanking maneuver we want. And more importantly, we're free to get out of squares and start dealing with the units here. And that was the big deal, is I can't be cowering in squares. If the cav isn't willing to charge, well, then I walk up to it and, force it to retreat or whatever. But you got to get it out of there. And one cav unit should not be able to hold up the entire Russian Imperial Guard, which is what it was feeling like. And then when I saw how competent these forces were at taking a cav charge without going into square, I felt really stupid. The dominance of cavalry has taken a real hit this turn. Not only what we saw there, but was able to outflank Sebastiani's one remaining cav that was kind of protecting things and forced it to withdraw, therefore able to push forward right up against the rest of his cav, and they're all going to take gunfire because, and I've ruled this different ways at different times. Back when I used to play it, I allowed cav to continue retreating indefinitely. The rules don't support that, but honestly, reality kind of doesn't support this idea of a disorganized mob of cav. I mean, it depends on how disorganized, right? But a disorganized group of cav being able to be bushwhacked and chased down by infantry. And basically what would happen is there's some cav here, some infantry nearby. If the infantry does something to scare the cav and make it run away and blow, it's 2 hexes further away. The infantry can keep moving and can catch them. The cav can't get away. I see that as problematic. And if you're in the midst of a charge and you call the charge, if you're in the midst of a charge or a successful charge and you blow the cav afterwards, again, you're within range that the infantry can catch it. It feels very wrong to me. However, again, the rules don't support it, and I feel like I'm kind of screwing with things too much because I don't understand all the abstractions that are going on in the game. And if I try to apply common sense and reality to it too much, things start to ravel at the edges. But here, I really don't know if I'm doing this. It's not even trivial to figure out, hey, did the designer really mean what I guessed at anyway or not? Stuff like that. And it's one of the problems with the loose style of the game. But on this iteration of playthroughs, and certainly for this game, I've chosen to go with a strict reading of the rules for this. I think it's a mistake. It makes cav too vulnerable. Anyway. Game rolls around and wow. I mean, the turns are just getting so big. Langrand beginning to show up on the map. Blucher's forces coming within range, but Gyulai is actually doing a bang-up job compared to what I thought. He's got a couple of really good high-powered light infantry, good firepower on them, which is impressive. Oh, I didn't make my decision. I guess I did. Whether or not to try to do melee, I set myself up for it. But the cost of doing melee with the fatigue rules is so high. I think the fatigue rules actually make it too expensive for the historical element. And I'm not sure that they should be played with. Unfortunately, they're the limitation on the casualties. Otherwise, the game would be way too bloody. So, one way or another, you're going to get something that's highly that's not historically accurate, and I don't know what to do about it. What's going on here? A rear guard action happening here. It's not going to be very good. Victor's going to have trouble dealing with that. The Russian guard has just pounded its way through Poniatowski and Auguro, and they're doing a lot of damage there. Doesn't look to me like Oudinot is going to get there. He'll be able to try to patch the hole, but it looks bad. Of course, then they'll be facing off guard versus guard elements. Up here, sort of a stalemate along this line. Hess Homburg, who looks Prussian, at least half his units to me, because they're too dark. You know, he's trying to break a hole through, but the forces haven't all arrived yet. But that's going to be some additional pressure on Mortier there. While these Austrians actually did a fairly good job considering how beat up they are currently. I gotta look at all these units now, and this is the problem with the corps morale rules, or the army morale. You know, it's going to apply with that too if you're playing with that. But with the that doesn't work in this game. But with the corps morale rules, I basically have to check each unit at least now and then to see if they go over. Now, I was sloppy with this and probably missed by a couple of turns or whatever on other cases, and I'm sure that's going to be the case again here. It's just really a matter of, Jesus, you know, how many times are you going to check it, and how much are you going to be aware of, oh yeah, this corps is close, I got to check it every turn or something. But I really have to do an assessment almost across the board with everybody who's in the fighting to see what kind of shape they're in. Now remember, I'm not taking disordered units into account, but I am going to take routed units and units that are off the board into account. I just see disorder as not that big a deal. Anyhow, gosh, I really don't want to do that. I need a break first. This is, you know, it takes like an hour to do a turn now. This is, it's what happens with these big games, but it's an hour standing, working my way through it, and it's just like, So I performed the checks on corps morale. 2 of them, no big deal. In fact, probably for the best for the units involved. Liechtenstein and Kellerman. 2 small units that have taken a beating. Liechtenstein's routed unit impacted this, and they're basically so beaten up. Everything in the command is that has losses on it is already disordered. So in both cases, so that actually gives them kind of a free pass. Except now they're at -2 morale. Until they fix that situation, which probably isn't going to happen today. But much more impactful, Clanau. Now, he was beaten up before he got there, didn't get a chance to rest, was trying to make his way around, did not, and at this point, I think I've got to give up on him. I can't see Hess Homburg freeing him. Clanau may not leave the board. That might not serve much purpose, but he may fall back and try to find a place to recover because he's not in good shape. A couple of units left the field. He's got like this 1 artillery with some infantry to back it up sitting there, and that's all that's left. They were doing pretty well. I don't feel like I particularly missed a chance on a check. Well, Kellerman and Liechtenstein may have, but I don't know. It's a close run thing. But yeah, Augureau. Oh, I didn't see Augureau's got a routed unit. That's the 206. Let me just check him. I mean, I didn't check. So he's pretty small. So that's 3, 4, 8, 12, and I need to have 16 for it to go over. And that would be bad if this collapsed, you know, for the French. That would take away a little bit of the time that I need to get Oudinot up into place and try to defend that. Oh, boy. Oh, okay. Couldn't find a good cav attack anywhere for the French. Awesome. Saves me some problems. What do we got going on? Sebastiani his forces pretty much en route, going back. Ney, getting word of the fighting going down here, has decided to support that with Suham. Suham was very good in Spain, actually. Victor continuing to press. Lauriston got a little late in moving, like missed a turn or something, but he's got orders to come in an echelon down towards the Altenburg Road. Auger trying to make some kind of sense out of his command. I got to move Napoleon. I don't know what he's up to. He should at least try to rally something. Oudinot beginning to take up formation, and that's enough that, you know, the Russian Imperial Guard is better firepower, better melee, but at least I've got something in the line that's a little bit sturdier than Augereau and Poniatowski, who's getting pretty badly. Well, he was hit up pretty hard before. He's okay now. Kellerman's the one who looks the same Polish, but his are all Cav. Mortier pushing down this way now, taking on those Hesse-Homburg forces, and that looks like it's the end of their fun, really. Who's up there? I want to say that's Marmont. Yeah. Looks like he's going to be able to pursue, and he's sending cav around the rear of that Austrian corps. I think that thing is just going to disappear, basically. Especially since Nansudi is up here. MacDonald took a rest, and that's it. And now it's time for me to take a rest before I get to firing, because it's just too big to do everything all in one standing. I guess the big shock of what happened on the French turn was Marmont's forces got repulsed by those disordered Austrians. There's still one stuck there. This is something that happens every now and then. The French had a case over here where a unit just refuses to break, and you really kind of wish it would, as the person owning it, because it's just melting away. But getting it out of there means it takes full fire before it withdraws, which is the same thing it's going to get if it stands and gets a chance at shooting. But that's on there. A little piece of tape has bulged a little too much. Anyway, that puts us over to the coalition side of the turn. And I keep calling it Austrian because my symbol for the coalition is that double-headed eagle thing, you know, Russia, Austria, whatever. But to be fair, and since it's black on white, it looks more Austrian to me than it does anything else. It didn't want to like do something like paint the thing half green, and you know, maybe partially gold or something like that. It just was trying to make a turn marker for this game. 10 a.m. and you know, the fighting has just started across the lines everywhere, but I feel like this video has reached about its length. So let's take a quick look at what we got coming. We got Langron. No, Lauriston Langron, right? That's the Russian commander's name, yeah. His column moving forward, York getting closer and closer, but you can see he's spread out all over hell and creation. I need to rest, let some of the artillery and everything catch up. Meanwhile, who's this? Gulay continuing his attack on the French, continuing to drive Sebastiani away. Not much happened there, but that's just an ugly situation where more and more fire is going to get pumped into those. Liechtenstein failing completely with what he's got, holding the line here with Meerkat or whatever. Mir goes with a V, Mir something, but I don't know who the hell he is. Is him? Mirvelt. The guards, they're sort of running out of gas. Started to see some of the smaller guard units disintegrating, and I just don't think I have enough oomph to break the line here completely and start rolling it up. Things are kind of a chaotic mess there. Over here, Hess, is it Hess Hohenlohe? No. Hohenlohe, Hamburg, Hess Hamburg. Hohenlohe's Prussian. But they're dark, so they might be. Yeah, you know, he's trying to form something to try to defend. He's no longer on the offensive, that's for sure. The Austrians there didn't suffer too badly, but yeah, I mean, they're destroyed as a functioning force, and Marmont is going to do what he can to run them down, I guess. And we got more reinforcements coming in at 11. And then at noon, the remainder of the Army of Bohemia comes back, I guess, down here. And that gives a lot more staying power, but they're not healthy units. You know, they haven't had their chance to recover. So that's the end of the line right now for this one, for this vid. The French attempts to smash the Army of Bohemia seem to be working fairly well. This is the one weak spot in what we're seeing. Drouet is holding off here so far, but you know, that other big corps coming, and then Langeron coming up there, I got no idea what that's going to be like. Looks like the French are in a reasonable position, but yeah. All right, upsy daisy.